All right, guys, we are gonna make this super cute gnome. This is my finished one. This is our inspiration. All right, this guy is done with glaze, and this guy is done with acrylic and fabric. Yeah, fabric, you heard it right. This is a Dec-GNOME-podge technique where we decoupage the fabric on there with a Mod Podge. Just fair warning, guys, this guy, it's a lot of work, all right? So be prepared to maybe do part of it one day and part of it another day. There's no reason why you have to tear through the entire subscription box in one day. Make it last. These projects are intended for you to do over a few days. So this guy right here, you're gonna want to take some time with him. This hat is a lot of work, okay, but it's fun work. It's nothing to be afraid of, but it's definitely not something you want to rush through. All right, so don't be afraid to stop and say, you know what, I'm gonna come back to that tomorrow, okay? Do it in stages. You can do his beard and his body one day, you can do some of his hat one day, you finish off the stitches the next day, but I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with it, and I think he's super cute. I really like him. All right, let's get started. So this is the gnome that we're gonna be working with. Right, he's so cute, super cute, all right? And the inspiration for this gnome is our famous patchwork gnome that Grandma Jackie makes. Her signature is this patchwork design on the hat, all right? So clearly she painted hers. It's a little different than what we're gonna do, but this is the inspiration, all right? If you don't know who Grandma Jackie is, Grandma Jackie's my mom. And my daughter's grandma for sure. So everyone here at the store always refers to her as Grandma Jackie. But Grandma Jackie's patchwork design has been on pigs, it's been on all kinds of things. People love it, they duplicate it, they do it too. And I thought, what a cool project to use as inspiration is this patchwork gnome. So how are we gonna do this patchwork gnome? Well, we're not gonna paint the patchwork. We're actually gonna do a technique called decoupaging. And we are going to be using fabric scraps, all right? So you've got a bunch of fabric scraps in your kit, all right? They're all different. Some people have some red ones, some people have some blue ones, some people have a little bit of both. Who knows? They're all gonna be different designs, different patterns, all different stuff, okay? And so you're gonna have that in your kit. You are also going to have this little bottle of Mod Podge, and this is what's gonna help stick that patchwork on for you. You're gonna wanna grab some scissors at home, some safe scissors. So you have that. The other thing you're going to need is your paints. So you've got some paints, and your paints might come in a strip like this, they might come in little dishes. It just depends on how much I feel like you guys might need. And you're always gonna have some sponges, right? You got lots of sponges, all right? You will also have plate for mixing colors and pouring out your Mod Podge. You got a set of brushes like this, and you're gonna use those for many things in the project kit this week, the subscription box kit. All right, so let's talk about this guy. All right, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to do an antiquing on the beard to bring out all the lines. And then we are going to paint the back, his body, and his nose, and then lastly we're going to do his hat. All right, so let's get started on that. All right, so we are gonna start with his nose. I like to start with the lighter colors first, so we can be careful not to get any of the dark paint on it. So I'm gonna use, I think, a little bit of this pink color for his nose, using my little plate to mix my colors. I got a nice little pink, and I'm just gonna very gently paint his nose. You got all different size brushes, so use one that best fits. This one's kind of angled and short and pointy. I'm just using what I have. I think his nose is a little bit pinker than I want, so I'm gonna add a little bit more white. And then of course we're gonna paint the back. I think I'm gonna paint his body a lavender color. So remember, you don't have all the colors possible in your kit, but you can always blend and mix other colors together to get new colors, right? I'm just gonna paint my body. And again, see, it does not take a whole lot of paint, guys. A little bit goes a long way. We also don't have a whole lot of water on our brush. We wanna keep it enough water in there so it's smooth and the paint moves across the surface. but we don't want it so wet that it's dripping. I went ahead and painted my body, got it nice and covered. You can see it's nice and covered. Got my nose all ready. All right, so one of the things you can do is you can jazz up your little body. It doesn't have to be a solid color. I think I am going to use the end of my paintbrush, and I'm gonna dip it in my white paint like this, and I'm just gonna add little polka dots. The other end of the paintbrush and do little teeny dots around it. Like that. Can you see it? Oh, there it is right there. Do like that. The bottom is all decorated now, and we're gonna let it dry. Once it's dry, we can go ahead and move on to the beard. This is acrylic paint, so it dries really fast. So now we're gonna move on to his beard. All right, so this is where we're gonna do a little antiquing on his beard. We're gonna take a brush, and you're gonna try to find a brush that is just kind of stiff. You've got some in your kit that are just kind of stiff. I'm gonna go back and use this little one again that I had. And you are gonna take, and make sure your brush is kind of dry. I'm gonna dab mine off on this sponge. And you're gonna take some black paint, and you are just gonna push it down into all those crevices, okay? And we're gonna do one side of the beard at a time. And we're just kind of pushing it in there, okay? Because we also have a dish of water. Remember, we started with a dish of water. We got a nice, clean dish of water. So you get that just scrubbed in there, some paint scrubbed in there. And then you're gonna take your sponge and you're gonna get it damp, and we're gonna take it off. And we're gonna get it damp and squeeze this. We're gonna have to change out your water a lot probably. You're gonna squeeze it. I'm gonna set this down here so I can really get into it. And I'm gonna scrub it. It. It's best to do a little section at a time because the paint does dry so fast. What that's doing is it's taking off some of the black paint on the surface and leaving it down in the beard. All right, we're trying really careful not to get it all over our body, but if we do get it on our body, we can always go over it with a little bit of that same color that we kept aside. All right, squeeze, and see how I'm just kind of rubbing that around there? Taking it off, squeezing. So I got some drips right there. I'm gonna go like that really carefully. But we're gonna just go ahead and go over that with some purple. So you got most of your beard done, and then you can take some white, and we can kind of use a dry brush like this. When I say dry brush, we're taking most of the paint off of it, and we're lightly going over the top of it, just here and there, here and there. See how that is? Here and there, just a little bit here, a little bit there. All right. And then we take that sponge again and we can kind of go over it like that. When that paint's still wet. And we're just kind of layering to kind of look like hair. And we do that by doing a little bit and wiping a little bit off. Doing a little bit and wiping a little bit off. Then we got a really cool beard, right? Really cool. Look up under his nose. See if he needs anything. I think he needs a little bit right here in this corner. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this darker gray and put it right here. Right. So just be really mindful of those areas up underneath his hat, where his beard meets his body. And if you do leave a little bit of white behind, it's not the end of the world. It can just be a white part of the beard, right? Now, if you get some black paint and you put it on your palette and then add a little bit of water to it, we want it to be like the consistency of ink. You can take that teeny tiny brush and you can just kind of go and add some extra little smooth lines in there. Some more little beard. Okay, so our paint's all dry on our gnome. Now we're gonna work on our hat. All right, so I cleared out all my paint. My paint's out of the way. Put it aside. All my water's out of the way. Now I have a clean palette, okay? And I've got all my little fabric scraps that came in my kit. And I've got my scissors, right? And so what I've done is I've cut these little fabric scraps into little squares, okay? They don't have to be perfect squares. They don't all have to be the same size. It doesn't matter, all right? And then we're gonna take our Mod Podge and we're gonna pour some out, all right? From there, we are going to start to make a patchwork on our gnome. Remember, we're gonna do, this was our inspiration. Now see the little patchwork areas, the little fabric-y areas, they look like a quilt. They're all different sizes, they overlap each other, they're just kind of crazy, right? That's what we're gonna do with this fabric. So we're gonna go ahead and start. I'm gonna start right here where you can see it. I'm gonna put some of this Mod Podge down. A nice generous coat, okay? And this is a little trick for you. Then I'm gonna use my wet Mod Podge brush and I'm just gonna dab it on one of these pieces of fabric and I'm gonna stick it on there like that, and then I'm gonna take the Mod Podge and go right over the top. So we got Mod Podge underneath and we got Mod Podge on the top, right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure that every edge, every section of that fabric is pushed down, okay? It's stuck down good. There's no bubbles in there, it's nice and flat, all right? The nice thing about the fabric is even though your hat is kind of curvy, when your fabric gets wet, it will just mold into whatever shape, all right? So then we're gonna go and get another spot. And again, you can line up your squares right next to each other if you want, or you can just kind of stick them on top of each other. I'm just gonna do this right here and stick this guy here. Now, see how this one kind of is going right there over the edge? That's right, that's a good thing. You kind of want it to go over the edge a little bit because you can take that Mod Podge and use it to fold it over the edge. Okay. Again, we got Mod Podge underneath the fabric. We got Mod Podge on top of the fabric. We are just covering this fabric and making sure every little corner and crevice and cranny is stuck down there good. Getting there, right? We're working on it. Takes a little bit of time. It takes some patience because you're doing one square at a time. But while we work on this, I wanted to point out a couple areas for you. If you look right here by his nose, you'll see my squares don't go all the way down. They don't go all the way down to here. I just didn't quite make it. It's okay to get some other pieces if you want and maybe cut a smaller piece. So I could cut a smaller piece and stick it right here on his nose, right? And then I could lay it right there on his nose, right there. And that Mod Podge is gonna just soak that fabric, which is then gonna make it bend right over that curve. The trick is to not have too much fabric hanging over. We want just enough so that it can bend right over that curve and not cover up his nose. We can take our brush and we can kind of tap it in there to make sure that fabric's down in there, right? But we can Mod Podge, glue down that fabric right underneath the lip of the hat, right? Okay, all I have left is this tippy top right here. That little tiny spot right there on the top. So I am going to cut a little piece. And it doesn't matter if it's perfectly straight or if it's square or whatever. I just want a piece that's gonna fit up there. My hands might get kind of yucky doing this. Sometimes it helps to wash them in between because as your fingers dry with the Mod Podge on it, they kind of get tacky and everything sticks to them. All right, so I'm just going to use my finger to kind of mold this little top around there and make that little point. And I got this little guy right here that wants to stick up. That's okay. I'm going to get him nice and wet with the Mod Podge and squish him down. top piece might be the hardest thing for you. All right, then you gotta let it dry. So we have our gnome's hat completely covered with fabric. Now you might find some places that maybe you missed, like I don't know if you can see it, I got a spot right there where I missed it with the fabric. That's okay, because at this point, if you want, you could cut another piece of fabric, put it over the top just like we did the rest of it, and let it dry. Or you could do something fun like paint a little flower on top of that spot. Now, at this point, you have an option. You can leave your gnome just like this. I added a little highlight to his nose. I don't know if you can see it. So there's a little highlight, a little white on his nose right there to highlight it. But anyway, so you can leave him just like this if you want. Or we could go back to our inspiration piece and we can add the stitches. Now the stitches are really easy. We're just gonna go around all the different squares with a little bit of black paint and draw stitches. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do that on some of these, okay? Now, the first thing you're gonna do is get your teeny tiny brush, and you find the smallest brush that you have in your kit. You're going to remember that we are going to create an ink-like consistency with our black, okay guys? So here's our black paint. I don't know where to put this so you can see it. Okay, so let's do this. So what I mean is we are going to pick up some black paint and put it on our dish. And it's a little thick. We want it a little thinner than that. So after we get some black paint on there, we're gonna go ahead and just pick up some water on our brush and add a little bit of water to our paint, all right? So once you have your black paint on, what you wanna do is everywhere where you see a different pattern, you're gonna draw around it. So, for instance, I'm trying to find a good angle. For instance, here's one here. I'm gonna just kind of draw around it there, like that. Right? And then I'm gonna go down this side. And this will also cover up any areas that maybe you missed a spot. So this guy is gonna go right here like this. Right. I'm gonna follow it down here to this guy, to the bottom. It's kind of hard to do upside down, guys. But essentially what I'm doing is just tracing the outside edge of all the different pieces of fabric. So you're going to do that around all of them. Sorry guys, it's hard to do it upside down. All right, once you get them traced out, and I'm loading my brush with more paint each time, but then you can go in and add the little fine lines like this. And remember, those are our stitches. And we can go through and add those everywhere. You're gonna always add more paint. If your black is starting to break up and not do a nice solid line, that means you need to add a little bit more paint. So let's do that and we'll come back. All right guys, so there you go. I finished mine. I got all the stitches around there. Went around all the little pieces of fabric. It's not something that has to be exact either, so don't worry about it, okay? So like if you missed an area or whatever, you notice that you can always go back, or there's so much going on here, I don't think anybody would even notice. But he's awfully cute, I think. Now you could, of course, you could do this without the fabric and just paint it. You could do it that way. You could paint a patchwork design, kind of like this one. It just isn't gonna be fired, right? Because boxes are going home, so we're not gonna return it to fire it. That's why we're doing it with this acrylic paint. But you see how cute it is still? It's still super cute, right? So that's the fabric. It gives you that little decoupage look with the real fabric. It's a nice solid seal on there, which is nice. Or you could paint it. If you wanted to just paint it with just the acrylic paint, paint a patchwork design on there, or maybe paint a whole different design on there, that's fine too. Or no design at all, just a solid color. After it was all painted and dry, the next day you could always go over it with your Mod Podge, just go over the whole thing. with your Mod Podge, and that's gonna seal that paint for you guys. All right, but he's super cute, I think. I'm pretty happy with him.